Thank you. And thank you for being here with us at the end of a very adventurous week. We have had a lot of events on campus this week, and it's only Friday. And tomorrow, I know we're here with over 2,000 students on campus, so it's quite a week for Seton Hall University. But it's also quite a week also for the opportunity to meet some of the leaders in the field. We started the week on Monday with leaders in athletics, Alex Rodriguez, as well as Shane Holloway, our new coach. They talked about sports, but they also somewhat talked about business. And so it's only fitting that we end the week talking about business in a context of what it means to have or to create an excellent business with high quality products. Before I introduce our speaker today, I want to share a story. And the story is, this is really, really an important day for me. Because I think that for the last 40 or so years, I've been addicted to the product and the many other products that you'll hear about today. I was about 11, 12 years old, growing up in Italy with my mom and dad as an only child. My mom passionate for coffee, and my dad cannot drink coffee after 12 p.m. because he will not sleep the entire night. So my mom was tired after lunch, the typical coffee after lunch, and in the afternoon, who do I drink this coffee with? And there is Katia, who at the age of 11 or 12 started drinking coffee with mom, and it must have been Illy coffee because I could not stop. So today I think that I don't have blood in my veins, I just probably am running on coffee and only of the highest quality. What an opportunity to hear from you how you grow and think about the vision and opportunities for a family-run business that becomes global. And I hope that we will hear a lot of stories that will resonate with you. As a university, understanding quality and how we deliver quality, I know it's an important question for us as well. And today, I know we will hear about tough choices that as a business, you have to make sometimes in deciding which products to bring to the market and which products to discontinue. So I'm excited to hear today about all these stories from the chairman of what is called Polo del Gusto, part of the larger Gruppo Illy holding company. Chairman Riccardo Illy started at Illy in 1977 and pretty much went to all the ranks and did a lot of fantastic transformations and also made those tough choices of sticking to a vision, to a product, and to a certain level of quality, expanding but not expanding too much. So we'll hear all about this. But I also want to discuss another part of the business, which is the one you lead today, which Polo del Gusto, the pole of taste, I wouldn't know how to translate that well, but it's about a lot of other products, equally addictive, very good wine, exceptional chocolate, tea, and jam. So I think once we get to know the business, it's going to be hard for anybody here to stay away from it. One thing that I wanted to also share about Chairman Illy's bio is that he's not just a businessman, but because when you want to get things done, you have to give it to somebody who's busy. Of course, during his business endeavors, he also found the time to be elected as mayor of Trieste, which is a position that he held until 2001. Then he was elected as a member of the Italy's parliament, and in 2003 he was elected president of the Friuli of Venezia Giulia region, which is a region a statuto speciale with a special set of rules in Italy, and he might probably explain it something a little different here. It's one of the 20 regions in Italy. And also in 2004, he became president of the Assembly of European Regions, which is a forum of inter-regional cooperation. In addition to that, he held a series of other positions in other governmental and business organizations across Italy and the United States. And today he is the chairman of Polo del Gusto. It's a great opportunity to have him here in a university setting because in addition to politics and business, he is also a lecturer. He believes in the power of education and also creating the next generation of leaders. In fact, I understand your involvement in Trieste with the MIB is because it's difficult to find very good managers and leaders, and so your mission is also to bring them from all over the world, educate them, tell them about the incredible opportunities, and prepare them prepare the next generation. So he currently gives lecture at Stanford, at HSA Paris, in Trieste at the MIB. He's also the academic director of Italia Innovation, which is an organization that fosters research, education, and new venture in manufacturing using a humanistic approach, so something that we really treasure. And he's taught courses on disruptive innovation and disruptive quality to students from all over the world. The students that take his classes come from MIT, Harvard, Stanford, NYU, Columbia, Yale, Princeton, Georgetown, UPenn, and in the future from Seton Hall University. On a personal note, he lives in Italy with his wife and daughter, and when he has spare time, he enjoys skiing and sailing. And not only does he enjoy doing that, but he also gives lessons in skiing and sailing. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the podium Chairman Riccardo Illy.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me at Seton Hall University. I had a small tour of the university and it's really wonderful, so congratulations. I know I have only about 20 minutes to tell you something about my book, so I immediately put my watch here and I start. I was born in Trieste, which is the city in the northeast of Italy, the northern port in the Adriatic Sea, so in the Mediterranean Sea. We are a kind of crossroad between the west and the east, the north and the south, a crossroad of populations. So we have, of course, Italians, but we have the slaves living in the city, and we have a group of Germans. So it's a very quite complex city, but very stimulating. As you can see in the picture, in the days when the air is so clear, and this happens often because we have a very strong wind, can arrive close to 100 miles an hour, and it's called the bora, and this cleans the air. You can see the mountains with the snow. And this is the city where you can make a regatta in the morning and going skiing in the afternoon. And some friends of mine are also doing this. They have more spare time than I do. So I lived in the quality of this city, wonderful city, and in a family that was also devoted to quality, because my grandfather, who was born in Hungary, in Temesvar, a city that then became Romania, came to Trieste in the years 30s and decided to produce the best coffee in the world. So he loved good food, good wines, and of course, good coffee. And by the way, he started producing also chocolate. But the chocolate production was abandoned when the Second World War started. So he spent all his life for improving the quality of his coffee, and the same did my father, who was a chemist. So he applied science to implement, to improve the quality of his products. So let's say all my life was spent within the quality. And quality means also beauty, means architecture, means art. And Trieste is very nice also on this aspect. We have theaters, even if it's a quite small city, 200,000 inhabitants, but we have a theater for lyrics, one for prose, another one for the Slovene language. We have different museums. So again, quality is part of the city. The one you see here is Piazza dell'Unità d'Italia, the biggest square. What you see in the bottom is the City Hall, where I spent 8 years of my life. At the right, there is the building of the region, where I spent 5 years of my life. And at the left, it's the prefectures of the city, of the representative of the central government. So let's say the state. So I told you that I lived during my life in quality. I spent my life to quality. But what is quality? And there are many, let's say, answers to this question. But before, I want to show you, probably most of you already know the Maslow Pyramid, where it is indicated that you have different level of needs you can satisfy, but unless you have satisfied the lower level needs like physiological, then safety, then belonging, only later on esteem, and lately self-actualization, you cannot afford the higher level. Now, physiological needs are not a big issue in, let's say, at least in the Western countries, but I would say also in the majority of the countries in the world. Safety, unfortunately, as we see in Ukraine, is still a problem, and not only in this country. And let's say that in the Western country we are more thinking to belonging, to esteem, and often to self-actualization. Another important aspect is what quality means, and Mr. Edward Deming, he was the inventor of total quality, an American that developed this idea in Japan. And he was saying in synthesis that quality is the absence of defects. So a demonstration with absence of negative aspects. And this didn't satisfy me that much, because it is sufficient to say which can be the minimum level of quality you require, and especially what means a standard of quality. But this was not sufficient for explaining, let's say, our way to think to quality. So the best description I found was by Theodore Levitt, a professor in Harvard. He wrote, unfortunately, few books, but one I really liked was Marketing Imagination. And there you can find 3 levels of quality. The lowest is necessary. So the level of quality beyond which, if you find some products, you would refuse it. Then it is the required or expected, if you prefer. So the quality that you just expect when you take a cloth, when you get some food, when you buy a furniture, when you go in an hotel, and so on. So required. But then there is another level that I preferred very much, which is augmented. So a level of quality that is going to surprise the consumer, something that goes beyond what he is expecting. And this is the field in which we are working. So to respond to the necessary quality, you will have just generic products. Then for the expected quality, you will have expected products. Then to give an answer to the augmented quality, you will have augmented products. This is the area in which we are working. And then, let's say, you have all the potential additional possibility to increase the level of quality. And we talk about potential products. I tried to connect the kind of needs with the kind of quality. So to primary needs, you respond with necessary quality. To the social needs, you normally respond with required quality, so just what you expect. And in the achievement or self-actualization area, you respond with augmented quality. So normally the people that stays in the high part of the pyramid are looking for augmented quality. So they are trying to be surprised by the quality of the products. This is a matrix. I was inspired by the Bcg Matrix, you probably know, the Boston Consulting Matrix, where also are used the animals, the cash cow, the dog, and so on. And so I thought there are two ways plus two to innovate. And I always say, who doesn't innovate dies. There are still some companies that didn't understand this. It is not possible to continue to make what you already did for decades. You must innovate in one way or the other. So you can innovate technologically, and this is the innovation we normally think at when we talk about innovation, but you can also innovate in terms of quality. And you can do it in an incremental way, one pace after the other, or in a disruptive way. So making jumps, making something completely different, not just a small improvement of what you did previously. So I found these 4 quartals, it's right, quartals? Yes? And so we have disruptive technology. I use the frog to represent it, because a frog passed from being, let's say, a fish to be an animal breathing with lungs. So it's really something technologically disruptive. And I use the cheetah to represent the qualitative disruptive quartal. And this is the area we are in. I think this matrix is important, especially for a startup. If you decide to found a new corporation, a new company, I think you should decide in which quartile you want to stay, and you want to compete, because of course you will find other companies already working in your sector, in your business. And so you have to understand which will be the dimension, for example. So I would say for a small company, startup company, if you want to innovate in the technology, you probably go to incremental technology, because to disrupt in the technology, you need a lot of money. We have seen it, for example, with the vaccine developed for COVID-19. It was a kind of miracle that in less than 1 year, we were able to develop a vaccine. Previously, it took about 10 years to develop a vaccine. But this costed billions and billions of dollars for many companies, because it arrived Pfizer and Moderna and Novavax, so we have now several vaccines. But each of these vaccines costed billions of dollars. So it's not possible for a startup to compete in this quarter. But if you want to compete in the quality, you probably go to disruptive quality, because in the incremental quality, you will find all the mass market products. So again, you will find companies whose sales are probably billions of dollars. So if you try to compete there, probably you go nowhere. But if you try to compete in the disruptive quality quartile, you can succeed. So an example are the bean-to-bar companies producing chocolate in this area. They normally have small shops where they process the cocoa beans, they roast them, and the consumer can see it. Then they transform it in chocolate and they sell the bars to the final consumer, and they are doing well. So this is for, I think, for entrepreneurs, managers, something that can inspire their choices. I called, because I understood that disruptive is a term, a word that has also some negative aspect. So I call the quartile Incanto. And that means that the quartile in which you have to surprise the people, the consumer, with augmented quality. Incanto is made by 4 pillars. I read some year ago one of the best books of the last, let's say, 20 years, and it is The 3 Rules by Michael Raynor. And he made a survey over some thousands of American companies to understand why only a few were able for decades, some over 100 years, to grow more than the market. And finally, he came out that there are 3 rules. The first is better before cheaper. So all these companies were thinking first to the quality and then to the cost. The second rule is revenues before cost. So these companies aimed at growing rather than in reducing cost. So they wanted, of course, to be profitable, but doing this through the growth of the sales and not with the reduction of the cost. And the third rule is there are no other rules. So I also tried, so that in reality the 3 rules are only 2. And I agree very much with the 2 rules. And I tried also to understand how the companies that are in the quartile of Incanto are working. So I was asked by the 2 young guys that started Italia Innovation, that you cited, and that asked me to design a course for a summer school regarding the quartile Incanto. So I prepared all the program, I made the majority of the lessons, and we went visiting many companies. So we did it for a summer school, then for a winter program, then again a summer school, and we visited totally some tens of companies, and I studied much more. So what came out in my case, that there are 4 rules instead of 3, and they are really 4, not 3 or 2. The first one is that the Incanto companies really produces goods whose quality can be detected by consumers that are not professional, are not expert of this field, as the best. So the simple way of doing this is you build a small panel of people that you just collect, not with a particular way of selecting them, and you make a blind taste. You let them, we do it, for example, with the chocolate, you let them taste different kind of chocolate. So the Incanto quality should be recognized, at least by the majority of the panelists, as the best. So really, the best quality. Secondly, to get this quality, you have to use the best raw material. It's difficult to get the best quality if you are using just, let's say, average quality raw materials. So only the best, no compromises in choosing the very best materials. I would always say, or almost say, whatever it costs. Of course, there are some limits because you have to sell your product then, but within certain margins, whatever it costs. Then to process this excellent raw material, you need a process which is normally different and incompatible with the one of the mass market. And fourth, all these companies are committed to sustainability. Nowadays we would say ESG, but I cite the example of Zegna that has been listed at the New York Stock Exchange, where we were this morning for an interview. And I know pretty well the chairman of Zegna, Gildo Zegna. When his grandfather founded the company close to 1 century ago, they had to cut some tree to build a factory. But they wanted to give back the trees, so they planted some thousands of trees in their neighbors. I'm saying this, they did this about 100 years ago, nowadays would be almost normal. And then they built a swimming pool for the citizens. They invested a lot in the local territory. They were always very, let's say, protective with their employees and very respectful with their supplier. So it is, and now we would say, an ESG company. They were also respected with the environment, of course, also regarding pollution. But they did this for decades, not just now. So the Incanto elements are represented by these words like relationships, family, coherence, perfection, all concepts you will find in the book. Authenticity, patience, cultivation, surprise, simplicity. I will only give few examples. I think that I have only a few minutes, spare minutes, yes. Okay, I will take some more. Thank you. I have the authorization. Perfection. The guy you see is a pastry chef. His name is Luigi Biasetto. He is really a perfectionist. So he uses the Mother East to produce his panettone or his pastries. And he's nursing the Mother East as it was a child. So he's giving every day flour and water to the Mother East, and is controlling the pH and controlling the temperature. It's something unbelievable. And I just made the example of the Mother East, but he's doing this with each raw material he is using. And the quality of his pastries are really excellent. The one he's handing is the tart that allows him to become the champion in Europe for the pastry chefs. And it's called the Sette Veli. So it's made with 7 different layers of excellent chocolate and other ingredients. Then another word cited before is coherence. So coherence is immediately linked to choosing the best raw material and processing in a way that will protect the quality of these raw materials. Here you see the machines. This is a small machine by Domori, which is our chocolate company, that allows you to produce chocolate also in a shop. So Domori only uses fine cocoas. Cocoas like Criollo. There are 2 species of cocoa, like there are 2 species of coffee trees. In the coffee you have Arabica and Robusta. In cocoa you have Criollo, which is like Arabica, the best, and Forastero, which is the worst. But in the opposite than in coffee, the large majority of cocoa is of the worst quality because it's much more productive. So Forastero represents about 90% of the global production. And in this case, you have an hybrid called Trinitario. And so we use Trinitario, Criollo, that was going to disappear from the world. So we saved 7 varieties of Criollo, and we have 1 plantation in Venezuela and the other in Ecuador. So we are growing this excellent raw material. And then the process, instead of being the traditional process after roasting the beans, That means grinding, refining, and conching. And conching is made for even 3 days, and at a high temperature. You just mix the hot chocolate at about 80 degrees Celsius for a long time to get an homogeneous chocolate. We use what can be seen in the machine, a ball mill. So it's a cylinder full with stainless steel spheres turned by an electric engine, and we do the 3 processes all together, so grinding, refining, and conching, in a short time, 8 hours, at a low temperature, 45 degrees Celsius. So this will allow us to protect, to maintain all the best flavors of the Criollo, of the Trinitarios, and to get a more creamy chocolate, because the balls will reduce the particles to about 10 microns, whereas the cylinders normally used go down to 20, 18. So normally when you eat some chocolate, you feel a kind of sandiness. With our chocolate, it's perfectly cream. So this is coherence. You have to do everything in a linked way and in a coherent way. Then family. This is the Zegna family. Gildo is the younger in the middle of the 3, and then there is the sister. So they started their business in 1910, so more than 100 years ago. And the family has several advantages and also some disadvantages. But vital for Incanto quality is the capability to think long term. In a family business, you normally think in terms of generation. You think, what will do my son or daughter or the grandchildren? It's normal. And for example, in a winery, you must do it, because if we plant, we own a winery in Montalcino called Mastroianni, a vineyard of Brunello di Montalcino, the grape is Sangiovese Grosso. You have to wait first 5 years to get the first full harvest, and then 5 additional years to be allowed to sell the bottles of wine produced with these grapes, because the regulation says that you have to wait at least 5 years. So totally 10 years. In a company where you have to provide quarterly results, you don't even think to the next 10 years. But if you want to get an Incanto quality, you need to think long term. So the family is the best solution. Then the commitment that a family member will give to the company, if he works in the company, is for sure higher than any independent manager. So Zegna is the name of the family and the name of the company. My name is Illy, and we have illycaffè, which is the most important company of the group. I worked for about 40 years. So the family is important. There is also the other side of the coin, so the negative point. Every member of the family expect to become a shareholder, but not only a manager and maybe a director and maybe the chairman. So we say only the first is a right, the other you have to deserve. So the Zegna family, as we have as well, wrote and signed a kind of statute of the family, where these rules are written. So we try to avoid the negative aspects of the family businesses. And it is written that you have only the right of becoming a shareholder. And if you do not sign when you are 18 years old the statutes, you will never have the right even to try to become a manager. And if you want to try, you have to start at the lowest level. I started in sales, and then you have to be put in competition with the independent manager, and the same with the directors, and the same with the CEO. We have everywhere independent CEO. At illycaffè, a lady has been appointed a few weeks ago, Cristina Scocchia. At Polo del Gusto is Andrea Macchione, who is an independent manager. And so in all the other companies we have independent CEO. But the family is the one that guarantees you the patience, also the long-term thinking and projecting to produce top quality. Then cultivation. Here it's myself with Massimo Mancini. His grandfather started as a farmer, farming wheat. He selected the best quality of wheats. He has a kind of experimental farms, and then he grows his factory for producing pasta. And he makes his pasta with his own wheat that he selected. And the pasta is made with bronze dyes. The bronze dyes oblige you to slow the production, so you cannot have a high productivity in his factory, but it will give you an improvement in the quality, because the surface of the pasta will be rougher, and so it will absorb more sauce. And then, after producing the pasta, he will dry it at room temperature. Of course, it will take much more time, about one whole day, 24 hours. But he says, if I want to give the best quality, I cannot heat, even if for a few seconds, the pasta at a very high temperature, as the industrial producers are making, the big industrial producers. So this is cultivation. That means also we needed farming, as we are doing with the Criollo cocoa. Then patience. What you see here is a piano. This has been projected. It's one of the last model. The producer is Fazioli. He is an engineer. And this has been projected by M. Liminal, and Philip Gendro is the architect that made the design. To produce a piano at the Fazioli factory, I visited, it is in my region, I visited when I used to be the governor of the region. It takes 2 years. They take the wood from the forest of Tarvisio in our region at a very high altitude in the northern part of the mountain, where it is cooler, because the trees will grow slower and the ring will be much more close one each other, and this will give the best characteristic to the sound of the piano. And then Paolo Fazioli is an engineer, so he made the project of the frame of the piano, and then everything is made precisely by his workers that are craftsmen more than workers, more than blue collar, and as I mentioned, it takes 2 years to get a piano. Finally, surprise. What you see is a table made by a producer of furniture close to Milan, and it is made by Riva 1920. Maurizio Riva is the chairman. This is one of the companies we visited. The wood used for this table has about 50,000 years. It's called kauri. It stayed under the mud in New Zealand for 50,000 years, and the mud protected the wood. It's unbelievable. If you touch the wood, it's like silk. It's unbelievable. And the beauty is also unbelievable. So that means if you see it, you will get surprised. And imagine when I went to the factory, I thought to a visit I made a few years ago in Berlin to our distributor of wines, the Mastroianni wines. And he was very proud of his big table where he organized a dinner. We were about 20 people around a table made with a single frame of wood. And so I thought, but probably this was exactly the same quality of table. And I asked Maurizio Riva, do you have a customer maybe in Berlin called so-and-so? And he said, yes, absolutely. So I saw his table over there. He produces maybe 20 tables a year, so the probability to find one in your life is close to zero. But I found a third one when we made a visit at Ferrari Winery in Trento. Again, I saw a table, I thought, but this is a Riva. And they said, yes, it is. So, and each time I was really surprised. Finally, simplicity. To get a top quality, an Incanto quality, you need not to be complicated. You need not to have many ingredients. In the chocolate, in the Domori chocolate, we use 2 or even just 1 ingredient. We use cocoa mass, of course, and cane sugar. Cane sugar because it comes from the same tropical area, so from the same countries. We do not add cocoa butter, which is like adding water in the wine, because it has no taste and no flavors. We don't use soy lecithin nor vanilla, whereas vanillin, no other flavors, nothing. And we also produce a 100%. That means we only use cocoa mass. And being Criollo, even if there is no sugar, it's sweet, so you can eat it. And the dish you see here is risotto alla Milanese, made by one of the biggest chef in Italy, Gualtiero Marchesi. He used a very thin layer of gold on the dish, but the dish was really very, very simple. And the ingredients were only a few. And the saffron, which is the most important ingredient other than the rice, is the typical ingredient of the Milanese risotto. Okay, that's it, and I just give you some elements, but in the book you will find much more. And the book aims at suggesting to the people that will read it to improve the quality of their life, choosing, when possible, Incanto products, but also to entrepreneurs, managers, also in the United States, that maybe will decide to develop their business in the quarter of Incanto, and so deciding to fulfill the 4 pillars of Incanto. Thank you so much.
So we're going to move to the Q&A session, and while Chairman Illy is situated with the mic, I want. That's for him. I'll use this. Yeah. I wanted to open our discussion and ask you some questions. Of course, I have plenty of questions, but I'd like to hear from the audience. But before I do that, as I was reading the book and listening to it, there is also an audible version that I downloaded and listened to the car back and forth. Great, thank you. I was really excited because I was reading with the eye of our university and what we do in academia. And I was also reading it with the eye of our new strategic plan and where we want to go, and quality and growth. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, I am really, really fortunate. Because while I don't have many of the virtues that are listed here, I have the perfect team. And in fact, before asking you a few questions, because many of you in the audience know them, I'm just going to give you the list of ingredients that make the Provost office one that can really create high-quality products. Bear with me for a second. I'm going to start with ingredient number 1, perfection. Kurt Rothoff over there. Perfect products and articles. Coherence. Chris Kucha. He might be... there we are. Chris Kucha. Beauty. Chantal. If she's not here, just remember those names. And beauty, if you meet Chantal, you know that she's beautiful inside and out. Authenticity, Eric, he says it as it is. Where is Eric? Simplicity, Peter. Cultivation, John Bushman. Refinement, Amy. Relationship, Jonathan. He's at a conference and he's sending us picture. That's how connected it is to us. So Jonathan is here in spirit. Patience, Byrne. Where is Byrne? Surprise, Anya. She's always an element of surprise, so you'll get to meet her. The one who helped, together with Byrne and Anya, organize this event today, such an expression of family, Christine Yearwood. Thank you. She's also a wine producer, so hopefully, I know you can't bring bottles with you, but we'll give it to Sarah. And last but not least, I also have an Encanto product. Where is Doug? Right there. So that's how we create excellent products here at Seton University. So everybody. I'll start with the first question, and I know I have a list of questions here, but I had to ask this because as I was going through the list and your definition of coherence and your definition of patience, I was looking at a part of Italy that is not my part of Italy. So I wanted to ask you, how do you reconcile the differences in Italy, where some of the excellent characteristics that you have here are probably more prominent in some regions as opposed to others? I think about Rome, where I'm from, or my colleagues. I think I might have colleagues here from Naples. It's not coherent. It's called l'arte di arrangiarsi, the art to make it, anyways. And yet, even if we don't have all of those characteristics, there is excellence and striving for excellence. So how many of those characteristics do you have to get to this enchanting level of quality?
First of all, I would answer that we are all grandchildren of the Romans. And the Romans left us two great gifts. One is genius, the capability of projecting, of building roads, bridges, aqueduct, that already exist. But the second was the ability to produce and to appreciate aesthetics. So beautiful things, good things. In Trieste we have a Roman theater. So Trieste was built during and even before the Roman Empire. I live, and we have the mosaic of Aquileia, only 30 miles from Trieste, which are something wonderful and has about 2,000 years. And I live in Prosecco, which is a village of the surrounding area of Trieste, where the Romans already farmed the glera, the variety of grapes that is now used for the Prosecco wines. And by the way, it's the name of the village that allowed Italy to maintain this name of this wonderful wine. Very easy, it's not a committing wine, but it's an excellent product. So now we still use these two, I call them competitive advantage as a country and as a population. So where we are really strong is producing machines, producing robots, but in the other hand producing quality, furniture, fashion, food, wine, whatever quality can be, make the difference. The Italians are keen. So these kind of characteristics are spread in the whole population. Then you are absolutely right. There are many differences between the north and the south, but also the west and the east. And I would say you need not to interpret exactly all the words of Incanto quality. You can maybe better interpret some and less other, or the opposite. So the capability of producing excellent products exists in the whole territory of Italy. Also in the ones where maybe you think they are less keen to perfection, for example. But I make an example. If you go to Naples, to Sicily, in the region Puglia, as a tourist, you will find wonderful hotels, not always big, sometimes very small, and you will find perfection. So sometimes even people that are not usually following the principle of perfection, when they know they have to give the best of themselves, of their company, they are able to do it.
Thank you. And please, I'll ask one more, and then please come and ask your questions. And again, it's not from my list, but it's something that you said before when I had to confess that in my office I use an espresso machine, and I was you're not coming to my office because it's an espresso. And your first reaction was, oh, but that's great, because Nespresso is an opportunity for us. We now do the capsule. And so I think there is a missing element in your list, which has to do with what you just did, right? This is not an obstacle, it's an opportunity. Call it optimism, call it willpower, but what makes you immediately think about the opportunity when you see a challenge?
I made a course many years ago on time management. And I remember some of the things that were taught in this course, and one was, behind each problem is hidden an opportunity. So whenever I see a problem or something negative, I look behind to find the opportunity. So it's become really a mindset. And another thing I remember of this course is, how can you eat an elephant? And everybody will say, it's impossible eating an elephant. But the answer is one piece a day. And that brings you to the time, to the patience, and sometimes something you cannot afford immediately can be done slowly, slowly. So in family companies, you can build a big company. It will take probably much more time than just getting money from the market and listing your company and let it grow in only 2 or 3 years. And sometimes what you learn in courses can be very useful.
Good. Thank you very much. So I'd like to open it up for a few questions before we go to the book signing and our reception. We need some audacious... yes, please, use the mic over there, and let's make sure it's on. No, little button in the front.
Arriving. Here we go.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you. I'm not a part of Seton Hall, and I'm so pleased to be here. It's such a lovely day, and thank you for having us here. And I wanted to say that I wondered if it were not sort of meant to be that we're in a university in New Jersey and we have a provost who's Italian. And I thought, right there that brings some meaning to the fact that we're bringing an Italian man who has created a wonderful book called The Art of Excellent Products, and it's about his family, which is the Illy family, and a family which has its roots in so many generations of Italy. And we're visiting a university in New Jersey that is has its roots in something Italian as well. So when you presented the Incanto of your school, it was very meaningful. And I just wanted to say that I appreciated that, because after reading this book, it never occurred to me that I could apply it to something within my own structure. So you've given that meaning, and I appreciate that. And I wondered if Signor Illy could tell us something about this formula of being able to apply his very reasoning in books, what he thinks about the way that you did that, and is that something he does with everything? So that, in other words, the idea of the pillars and how we too can apply everything that he's written about to our very own lives. Maybe it's about a university, maybe it's about a company, maybe it's about life in general, because I found that something that I could take away with me. So I thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that the most important word in the book is coherence. And here again, I can make the example of how using the criteria of coherence to give an answer to your question. When you choose a method, you choose a strategy, you have to fit on it. Often I found people that, or companies, that wrote down excellent strategies, but then if you look at the action, often the action are not coherent with the strategy. And then you ask, why are you doing this? You wrote in your mission, in your strategy that you want to do something else. And often the answer is, I have the opportunity. It seemed that it was worthwhile to do this, even if it's not perfectly online with our strategy. And in this case, you are making a mistake. So I think that when I choose the model of Incanto quality, I stick on it, whatever the activity we do. And for example, we start from the way we select the companies to acquire. I would never acquire a company which is just in the mass market quality. Doesn't interest me. And wouldn't be coherent with the other companies. It wouldn't be impossible to get a synergy. So the last acquisition we made, we will sign the final contract to get 80% of the capital, is the small company producing biscuits and panettone and so, but they don't use just wheat. They use emmer, which is a particular kind of grain. They use kamut, which is another particular grain. That, by the way, has 1/2 of the gluten than the traditional wheat. And also in the process, they make something really special. So I met the founder some year ago at one exhibition in Florence. He let me taste his products, told me the story. And last year he came saying, I need a partner, so I think that I would be the right company to be part of Polo del Gusto. And so in a few months we did the agreement, but it was coherent. In other cases, they offered to me, for example, a Prosecco company. Even if I appreciate the wine Prosecco, our decision was to stay in wine to give stability to our family business. So in 2020, we had losses of sales up to close to 30%. The winery lost 20% of the sales. But we produce red wines, Brunello di Montalcino, that can last 40 years. Even if we don't sell the bottle in 2020, we will do it in 2021 or 22. Doesn't matter. So you have stability in this sector. But my decision was only to invest in what I call universal wines. So wines that has a very long story, possibly of century, and that are already distributed worldwide. And I can expect that they will last for further decades or century. If I want in the wine to find the stability, I need to have wineries that are in the universal sector. And Prosecco is not. Prosecco has to be consumed possibly in 1 or 2 years, no more. Then it starts oxidizing. It loses its best flavors. So this wouldn't guarantee us stability in the long term. So when they proposed, I said immediately, no, thank you. Could be the best producer of Prosecco in Italy. I would say no in any case. So coherence.
And if I may add, as I was reading it, I could not stop thinking how it applies to us. In fact, we have some deans here. We're going to make it a required reading of our next Dean's Council. Because we make many tough choices like you every single day. A dean has to decide which program am I going to support and which one can I not support. And is it coherent with our story and what we want to say about our unit and our university. So I think there is a lot here that we can also understand and connect to our everyday life in an educational institution. Any more questions? Now the technology works, so you can, thank you for being the test for the technology too. Yes?
This was a great presentation. You spoke about family, and my question relates to my family in Italy, who produces a product which I'll talk to about later. I don't want to take away from espresso, which is but when was your company founded, and what generation is now operating in the company?
illycaffè has been founded in 1933, so by my grandfather. I represent the third generation. My father took over in 1956 when his father died. He liquidated his sister. He was playing piano, so he was not interested in managing a roasting company. And I am the second of 3 brothers, and we also have a sister. And then in the next generation there are 9. But one of our members of the third generation is now leaving, so the elder brother is exiting the company. So in the fourth generation there will be 5 representatives, and at present are committed in the companies 2, but in the next months we will increase to 3. And one of the reason we decided to start the diversification in 2004 is not only to divide the risk, being only in one business increases the risk, of course, but also to have more opportunities to the next generation to try being an employee or a manager or a director in the companies. And you cannot imagine of having 4 or 5 members of the family in one single company. It would be, I would say, a disaster for the independent managers and also for the employees. So having more companies, we can have one member working in one company, another in the second, and so on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming at Seton Hall, and welcome. By the way, I love illycaffè. And I was just looking for nocciolino, so please make nocciolino with because that's amazing. Anyway, I was reading your story, and I'm fascinated by your story. And speaking of family, and I learned that, your grandfather was Hungarian by origin. And if you can just explain to us, what was this Eastern flavor, if you will, coming from the East, from Hungary. And of course, you are from Trieste, where, Austria-Hungary, and just at the core of the Austria-Hungarian Empire. So I would really want to hear, that part of the story from your family and how that impacted, the business. Thank you.
Yeah, our family is quite complex because the grandfather on the side of my father came from Hungary, but his wife was half Irish and half of German origins. So her father was born in Trieste, but the family was of German origins. And she was born by chance in Johannesburg. And on the side of my mother, both came from the region Istria. My grandmother from Rovigno, and my grandfather from Pola. And I think that this mix is important for us because we took some part of the DNA of the different population from the Hungarian, from the German, from the Irish as well. And but finally, what, let's say, guided the family were the Italian sentiment and capabilities, and so quality and attention to aesthetics, to the beauty was what guided us. My grandfather is, even if he was Hungarian, was very interested in quality. So his objective was to produce the best coffee in the world, but he was eating well, drinking good wines. He was helping painters. He painted himself. I have the sole painting we were able to get. A friend of mine, by chance, he was a Croat. He passed away some year ago. Had as a housekeeper a lady that was the daughter of the farmer of my grandfather. So going in the house of this farmer, one day he was a passionate of painting. He saw a painting and asked, who did this painting? And the answer was Francesco Illy, so my grandfather. And he asked, what would you give it to me? And he said, no. But after some year, one day, it was my birthday, and this friend of mine prepared a gift, and I saw immediately it was a painting, and I understood what it is. So he was able to convince the guy of giving him the painting. So quality was really in our DNA, and in this case I would say that the Hungarian origins fit very well with the habits of the Italian, and then our blood is mixed with Italian in the majority, and then, as I said, also German and Irish.
Thank you. And we're going to take one last question because I know we need to leave some time for, yes, you were coming already. And then we'll move to the book signing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you both. This has been a wonderful presentation. This is actually the second time I've heard the presentation. I participated in an online book presentation, so it's really exciting to see you in person. So I'm just wondering, we talk about Incanto, and we know that there are premium brands in other countries, by other nations. But when we think of Incanto, not just because the word is Italian, it's something that I think is really interconnected to the Italian culture. So we think of Illy coffee, and we know that Illy is sustainable, and they're very responsible, and they educate their bean growers, and they make them sustainable so they can carry on with the production of beans. And then we think of other Italian companies like Luisa Spagnoli, when she made the Bacio Perugina. She started a daycare during the war so that the people could, the women who were working with her could bring their kids to work, and she was very responsible for her employees. So what is it about Italian culture and Italians in general that are able to meld this whole concept of Incanto perhaps better than any other nation or culture? If that's I mean, I don't know if you can answer that. I know it's a very loaded question, but it's just very fascinating that Italy manages to do this with what seems like such ease and simplicity. And, perhaps American corporations struggle to achieve this kind of balance that Italians have. So there's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say, first of all, the origins of the Italian population, as I mentioned before. So we have beauty, aesthetics in our DNA, because we are coming from the Romans, and they were already committed in aesthetics at that time. But then I think that the fact that the large majority of the Italian companies are family-owned, again, helps in developing Incanto companies. And then the fact that we are maybe more responsible to other people, to the member of the family, sometimes even too much, because you also need to leave your children to be responsible by themselves. And sometimes you find in the Italian families, let's say, children that has more than 30 years and that are still living with mom and dad. But this kind of attention is also given to the employees and to the supplier. So we try to live in a harmonious way with all the other people, with also the competitors. I didn't say it before, but I think that there are some competitors we have to consider bad, but others we have to consider good. So often in Italy, for example, in the wine sector, it's the norm. You cooperate with the competitors. And I think as far a competitor is helping you to build the primary demand of Incanto quality products, he is a good competitor. If he starts telling wonderful stories with the marketing, but he doesn't have the first pillar, so a superior quality product, in this case he is a bad competitor, because he is not helping in building the primary demand, but he's just exploiting the work made by other people, by other companies. But this spirit of competition in economy is a word that arrived quite recently, let's say. I would say it's almost normal in Italy. So it's one of the characteristics of the Italian population, the willingness to live well together, to be in agreement with the other people, and also with the other companies. Why not?
Great, thank you. And I'd like to close on that, the willingness to be in agreement and collaborating with each other, which reminds me, I have a very dear colleague here in the audience, the VP for Advancement, who comes from Greece. So I'd like to recognize that the Romans have learned one thing or two from Greece, and we collaborate. I want to thank everyone for being here with us. If you haven't picked up your book outside, please pick one, and we thank you again for your gracious time today and for the opportunity to sign the book, and which we'll be delighted to continue to use in the university in some of our classes. Thank you.
Grazie.